In 2001, the door to the wizarding world officially opened when the film Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was released to the public. It was not merely a film adaptation. It created a global cultural earthquake, etching a fervent belief in magic into the minds of millions of children and adults alike. The ancient corridors of Hogwarts, the echoing spells and the battles between good and evil became an unforgettable part of a generation's memory. But behind those classic characters who have become immortal on the silver screen were flesh and blood human beings with their own very distinct fates, very real pains, and tumultuous lives. More than 2 decades have passed since that first day and time. The most fair yet cruel judge has carved indelible marks upon their lives. Some fought until their very last breath. Some chose a quiet life behind the glory, and some permanently stopped their journey, leaving behind infinite regret. Now let us sit back and quiet our minds to look back at the tearful and glorious paths of the souls who once breathed life into that magical world. Alan Rickman as Severus Snape. In the world of Harry Potter, Severus Snape appears as a ghost lurking in the dark corridors of Hogwarts. He was a heartbreakingly complex character, initially appearing with a cold exterior, a deep menacing voice and cruel severity, but hidden deep inside that black robe was a heart broken by love and undying loyalty. Alan Rickman, taking on this role at the age of 55, did not merely act. He lived with Snape's pain for a decade, with sorrowful eyes, and a voice described as velvet wrapped around a razor blade. Rickman transformed a hateful potions master into the most tragic symbol of sacrifice. To fully embody this character, it seems Rickman had to summon all the experiences of loss in his own life. Born in Acton, London, his childhood was soon cast in shadow when his father died of cancer, when he was just 8. The silent sacrifice of his single mother, raising 4 children in poverty and public housing, forged an Alan Rickman who was sensitive, profound, and full of compassion. After the resounding success of Harry Potter, Alan Rickman's career did not stop at Snape's shadow. He continued to affirm his position as one of Britain's most talented actors with diverse versatility, from sharp villains to comedic or romantic characters. He tried his hand at directing and left a bold mark on the stage. However, what made people respect him was not just his talent, but his way of life, in stark contrast to the solitary and bitter Snape. The real-life Alan Rickman was a warm, generous, and absolutely faithful man. He gave his whole heart to Rima Horton, his first love, whom he met at age 19. They were together for more than half a century, a real-life fairy tale, quiet and enduring, only officially marrying in 2012 in a secret ceremony. Rickman always kept his private life guarded. He did not want the noise of fame to tarnish the peace of his family. There seemed to be a strange connection between Rickman and Snape. Both were men who kept great secrets until the very end. If Snape hid his love for Lily Potter, Rickman hid his own physical pain. In the final years of his life, he silently battled illness without a word of complaint to the public. In 2005, he began treatment for prostate cancer, and by 2015, a minor stroke led to the discovery of terminal pancreatic cancer. Instead of collapsing, he chose to work until his final days, completing roles in Eye in the Sky and voice work for Alice Through the Looking Glass. However, that proud journey had to come to a halt on January 14th. 2016, just 1 month before his 70th birthday. Alan Rickman took his final breath in London. His passing left a vast void in the hearts of fans and colleagues, an unannounced farewell from the great half-blood prince. Maggie Smith as Minerva McGonagall. If Hogwarts needed a steadfast pillar, it was Professor Minerva McGonagall, the woman with hair tied back tight, sharp eyes behind spectacles, and an authoritative demeanor that required no shouting. At the age of 67, Maggie Smith brought to this character a sternness that was yet full of warmth, the embodiment of Gryffindor courage. She was not just a strict transfiguration teacher, but a silent protector of her students. Behind that sharp gaze was a benevolent soul, and this seemed to reflect a real life full of art, but also full of thorns for Maggie Smith. She was one of the greatest living legends of the British stage and screen who began her career at age 16 and was once slapped unconscious on stage by the legendary Laurence Olivier over an acting disagreement. A painful memory, but also a testament to her unyielding resilience. Maggie Smith's career spanned decades with countless prestigious awards from Oscars to BAFTAs. After Harry Potter, she continued to conquer global audiences with the role of the Dowager Countess in Downton Abbey, a sharp, humorous, and powerful role that affirmed her status as a national treasure. However, few knew that behind those strong roles was a woman who had fought ceaselessly with illness and loneliness. In 1988, she was diagnosed with Graves' disease leading to radiotherapy and eye surgery. By 2007, while filming Harry Potter, she continued to face breast cancer. She wore a wig, enduring the pain and fatigue of chemotherapy to complete the role, displaying an incredible steely spirit. Her private life also carried many somber tones. After her second husband, playwright Beverly Cross, passed away in 1998, Maggie Smith lived alone. In 1998, rare interviews when asked about loneliness, she would only smile sadly and admit that life without someone to share it with seemed meaningless. Buried herself in work to fill that void, dedicating herself completely to art until her final years. No matter how strong one is, the laws of life and death are unavoidable. On September 27th, 2024, the art world was shocked to receive the sad news Maggie Smith had passed away peacefully in the hospital at the age of 89. As soon as the news spread, theaters across the West End and Broadway simultaneously dimmed their lights, the most solemn ritual to send a legend off to eternity. Robbie Coltrane as Rubeus Hagrid. In the childhood memories of millions of viewers, Rubeus Hagrid was the giant with a gentle heart, the keeper of keys at Hogwarts and Harry Potter's most loyal friend. Robbie Coltrane, with his massive stature, bushy beard, and smiling eyes, embodied Hagrid so perfectly that people believed the character was written for him. Starting the role at age 51, Coltrane brought warmth and protection, becoming a symbol of kindness. But ironically, behind the image of that warm giant was a Robbie Coltrane struggling with psychological ghosts and persistent physical pain throughout his real life. Born in Scotland under the real name Anthony Robert Macmillan, his life was not as smooth as the fairy tales he acted in. Robbie publicly admitted to a long battle with alcoholism. The pressure of fame led him to seek solace in drink, but it quickly became a shackle, destroying many precious relationships, including his marriage to Rona Gemmell. Although they separated, he lived with regret and never remarried, spending the rest of his life in loneliness and illness. In the years following Harry Potter, Coltrane's health declined strictly. Obesity and type 2 diabetes ravaged his body, but most painful was osteoarthritis, which confined him to a wheelchair from 2019. The image of a man who was once strong, who once disassembled a car engine with his bare hands, now needing help with every step, was a heartbreaking tragedy. He once described his pain as constant 24 hours a day without a minute of rest. Even so, he maintained an optimistic spirit whenever he appeared in public, remaining the cheerful Uncle Hagrid in the eyes of fans. But human endurance has its limits. On October 14, 2022, Robbie Coltrane took his final breath at a hospital in Scotland at the age of 72. His death certificate noted that he died of multiple organ failure, closing the life of a giant who spent his life bringing smiles to the world but bore too much pain of his own. Michael Gambon as Albus Dumbledore. Taking over the role of Albus Dumbledore from the third film onwards following the departure of Richard Harris was a colossal pressure, but Michael Gambon did more than just fill a void. At the age of 63, he brought a completely different Dumbledore, majestic, but also full of mischief, powerful, and somewhat unpredictable. Gambon did not try to copy his predecessor. He breathed new life into the character, making him more modern and earthly. As one of the leading stage actors recruited by Laurence Olivier himself, the great Gambon, as he was known, had a glittering career spanning from Shakespeare to hit television series. He was the embodiment of tireless artistic dedication, a diligent craftsman in the cathedral of art. However, Michael Gambone's private life carried as many twists as a play. He was called by the media the quiet gentleman of private storms due to his mysterious double life. He married Ann Miller in 1962, but simultaneously maintained a decades-long relationship with Philippa Hart, who was 25 years his junior and had children with both women. He divided his time between two families, a strange arrangement he maintained until the end of his life. Yet professionally he remained a monument. But the tragedy of old age spares no one, not even the greatest wizards. In 2015, Gambone was forced to announce his retirement from the stage, a painful decision because he could no longer remember his lines, an actor's most important tool. His health declined rapidly after the age of 80. Hospitalizations for pneumonia became more frequent, signaling that the end was near. He gradually withdrew from the public eye, living his final days in quietude, far from the stage lights he once commanded. And then on September 27, 2023, Sir Michael Gambone passed away in the hospital following a severe bout of pneumonia at the age of 82. He departed in the arms of his loved ones, leaving the world a massive legacy and the image of a wise Dumbledore that will live forever on film. Richard Harris as Albus Dumbledore. Before Michael Gambone donned the headmaster's robes, Richard Harris was the first to bring Albus Dumbledore out of the pages of the books. In the first two films, Harris at age 71 portrayed a Dumbledore with saintly beauty, blue eyes twinkling with intelligence, and a demeanor as gentle as a fairy tale wizard. But the irony and paradox were that in complete contrast to Dumbledore's dignified appearance, the real-life Richard Harris was once one of the most notorious bad boys of British cinema in the 60s and 70s. He was a symbol of rebellion, wildness, and deadly charm. Harris' life was a series of anecdotes about alcohol brawls and all-night parties. He was banned from many bars in London, fainted on film sets, and was blacklisted by many major directors. His famous quote, "I don't have a drinking problem, I have a surviving problem," accurately summarized that reckless lifestyle. His talent was undeniable, with a series of classic roles and Oscar nominations, but the massive fortune he earned largely flowed away into debauched pleasures. He even once bought an entire hotel just to drink in peace. That lifestyle came at the cost of his marriage to Elizabeth Reese Williams and estrangement from his family. When he accepted the role of Dumbledore, few knew these were the final efforts of an old lion growing tired. In 2002, shortly after completing Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harris was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. The disease progressed at a breakneck speed, ravaging the body of a man, once considered invincible. Just weeks after being hospitalized for pneumonia, Richard Harris took his final breath on October 25, 2002, at the age of 72. His passing was the first major shock to the Harry Potter family, leaving behind regret for an exceptional but thorny talent. Vern Troyer as Griphook. Vern Troyer, a small man standing only 81 centimeters tall, appeared in the first Harry Potter film as the Goblin Griphook. Although his appearance was brief, his intelligent, quick face and sorrowful eyes created a truly convincing magical creature. Behind that role was a Vern Troyer with extraordinary willpower. Born with cartilage hair hypoplasia, dwarfism in a strict Amish family. He was never pampered or treated specially. His childhood consisted of days of hard labor tending livestock and chopping wood like any other person. It was this harsh upbringing that forged a strong Vern who dared to step out of his comfort zone to conquer Hollywood. His career exploded with the role of Mini-Me in the Austin Powers series, making him a global star. But fame, coming too fast, brought consequences. Vern Troyer, behind the on-screen smile, was a soul full of trauma. He battled depression and severe alcoholism, demons that were always lurking to swallow him whole. He yearned to be recognized as a true actor rather than just a phenomenon due to his appearance, but pressure and loneliness gradually broke him down. Persistent internal battles eventually led to a tragic end. In early April 2018, following a mental health crisis, he was hospitalized in critical condition. And on April 21st, 2018, Vern Troyer passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 49. The cause was determined to be suicide by alcohol poisoning. The small man who once made the whole world laugh chose to leave the world in ultimate sorrow, leaving behind grief over the price of fame. John Hurt as Garrick Ollivander. Garrick Ollivander, the legendary wand maker, was a character who brought a sense of mystery and antiquity to the wizarding world. John Hurt, with his large, deep eyes and characteristic raspy voice, transformed Ollivander into a sage holding the secrets of magic. In real life, John Hurt was also a giant of British cinema with a massive career and an acting ability that touched the very depths of human pain. He specialized in gritty roles, lost souls, and those suffering great trauma typically seen in The Elephant Man. Perhaps this was because his own life was a sequence of lonely days and internal struggles. Growing up in strictness and isolation, John Hurt found liberation in acting. He was a creative genius, but also a man weak before temptations. He went through 4 marriages, searching for love in vain until he met his final wife in his twilight years. He was also a heavy smoker, a habit that ravaged his health day by day. In 2015, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Although he declared he had beaten the disease in 2016 and continued to work, the cruel illness returned. On January 25th, 2017, just a few days after his 77th birthday, Sir John Hurt passed away. His departure was a huge loss to world cinema. He lived a full artistic life, leaving behind haunting and profound roles that were just like the man himself. Richard Griffiths as Vernon Dursley. If the wizarding world was full of color, the Dursley family represented the dullness and narrow-mindedness of the Muggle world led by Uncle Vernon Dursley. Richard Griffiths brilliantly portrayed a grumpy, prejudiced man who was cruel to Harry Potter. With a large physique and a face always red, with anger, he made Vernon a convincingly hated character. However, in complete contrast to Vernon's pettiness, the real-life Richard Griffiths was a man with a kind heart, an intellectual actor, and a warm partner, even though his life began with physical misfortunes. Born in North Yorkshire from the age of 8, Griffiths suffered from a pituitary condition due to a misguided radiation treatment which permanently damaged his metabolism and led to obesity. His entire life was a struggle with an oversized appearance and the prejudices that came with it. Instead of lamenting his fate, he used humor and innate talent to overcome insecurity, becoming one of the most respected stage actors in Britain. His role as Hector in The History Boys brought him prestigious Tony and Olivier Awards, affirming an artistic level far beyond simple comedic roles. His private life was also a beautiful story of sincere love. He married Heather Gibson in 1980, and although they had no children, they lived happily together, relying on each other through every up and down. Griffiths was always an optimist, a spiritual support for many young actors, including Daniel Radcliffe, who considered him a mentor. But that kind heart eventually stopped beating. On March 28, 2013, after heart surgery in hopes of improving his health, Richard Griffiths passed away due to complications at University Hospital, Coventry, at the age of 65. His sudden departure shocked his colleagues, leaving memories of a large man with a gentle soul completely opposite to the harsh Uncle Vernon he once portrayed. Robert Hardy as Cornelius Fudge. Cornelius Fudge, the Minister for Magic, was the embodiment of conservatism, fear of the truth, and a lust for power. Robert Hardy brilliantly portrayed the insecurity and obstinacy of this character, but few knew that the real-life Robert Hardy was a learned scholar, a history lover, and an expert on medieval longbow. He was a student of both the great writers C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien at Oxford, a formidable intellectual foundation. His life was not noisy with scandals, but passed in silent dedication to art and research. However, that wisdom came with solitude. 2 failed marriages led him to live his final years alone in a house filled with books and memorabilia. A rib injury in 2013 ended his stage career, pushing him into complete quietude. He passed away on August 3, 2017 at a nursing home for actors at the age of 91. A long life of dedication and intellect closed gently, like turning the final page of a book. Helen McCrory as Narcissa Malfoy. Entering the Harry Potter world quite late, Helen McCrory left an indelible mark as Narcissa Malfoy. She brilliantly portrayed a cold, proud, aristocratic woman who was fiercely torn by maternal love. The sharp but anxious look in Narcissa's eyes when protecting Draco Malfoy, or the moment she lied to the Dark Lord to save her son, showed McCrory's superb acting depth. In real life, Helen McCrory was also a strong, intelligent woman full of charisma. Born into an intellectual family, she possessed sharp beauty and innate talent, shining brightly from the theater stage to lifetime roles like Polly Gray in Peaky Blinders. Not only a star, Helen was a model of a modern woman successful in her career and fulfilled in her family. Her marriage to actor Damian Lewis was admired for the deep understanding and love they had for each other and their 2 children. She lived a life full of passion, always prioritizing family and actively participating in charitable activities. Even when facing death, she maintained that spirit. She kept her breast cancer secret, not wanting pity to overshadow her artistic efforts. Throughout the painful treatment process, she and her husband still raised over £1 million for health care during the COVID-19 pandemic. That resilient woman fought in silence until the very last moment. On April 16, 2021, the world was stunned to hear that Helen McCrory had passed away, at home at the age of 52. She left too soon when her talent was at its ripest. Her husband shared that she died like a warrior without fear, and wanted to be remembered for the joy she brought rather than the sadness of illness. Elizabeth Spriggs as the Fat Lady. The portrait of the Fat Lady guarding the Gryffindor entrance was only a small supporting role, but the charm and operatic voice of Elizabeth Spriggs made it memorable. In real life, she was a veteran stage actress of the Royal Shakespeare Company. However, to achieve that career, she had to pay the price with a painful decision in her youth, leaving her husband and child to pursue her passion. That pain likely followed her throughout her life, hidden behind the humorous roles on stage. She found a peaceful harbor late in life at age 48 with her 3rd husband. But in her final years, her health declined severely. She passed away on July 2008 at the age of 78, leaving behind regret for a talent that dedicated everything to the stage, even at the cost of personal happiness in her youth. Roger Lloyd Pack as Barty Crouch Sr. Barty Crouch Sr., a Ministry of Magic official so strict he was cruel, who threw his own son into Azkaban, was portrayed with haunting intensity by Roger Lloyd Pack. Contrary to that cold role, Roger Lloyd Pack was a beloved comedic actor in Britain through famous sitcoms. He was a man of deep interiority, always agonizing over the human condition, perhaps influenced by his mother's background as a Jewish refugee and the pain of war. He lived a fairly private life, struggling with low self-esteem, despite being very successful. He found happiness with his second wife and children, but fate did not allow him to fully enjoy his old age. In 2014, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and passed away very quickly thereafter on January 16th, not yet reaching his 70th birthday. He rests at Highgate Cemetery, alongside great names of history, ending a diverse and colorful artistic journey.